Well, hey there, KOTA Territory. Welcome to your KOTA's Political Pulse. I'm Humberto Giles-Sanchez. I'm joined today by investigative reporter Blake Troli here, kind of regarding an interview he did last week, kind of talking about what seems to be a very sought after, at least people are looking forward to this upcoming election come next year, correct? It's
going to be a really interesting election, but more importantly, this interview happened at just a really interesting time to hear from one of these candidates. So we spoke to independent candidate Brian Bengs, and again, this interview coming as there's multiple issues that I think people would be interested in hearing from a senatorial candidate on, this being Trump sending troops into the LA area. And I do want to make a note here. In the interview, we did this interview Friday afternoon. I had said 200. There's actually 700 in the LA area. I should make the note, though, that 200 have been actually sent to protect federal property, but 700 are in the LA area. I said 200 during the interview. But nonetheless, we talked about that. Now, again, on Friday, we're doing this interview all while Israel and Iran, the situation there is heating up. And at the time, we had just heard about some of the Iranian retaliation. So you'll hear me asking him about that. And keep in mind, Brian Bengs, a little bit of background about him. Brian Bengs is a former lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. He taught international law at the Air Force Academy as well as the NATO school in Germany. Right.
So he clearly has some experience kind of working within the system, figuring out that kind of, when it comes to the military, figuring that out, especially with new reports, at least for today, Monday, from the Iran-Israel conflict, missile strikes happening overnight as well, here overnight.
And he's looking at it from a legal standpoint because of his international law background. So he breaks down his legal analysis of the whole thing and gives some opinions there.
Exactly. And we're talking about kind of really quickly, election-wise, when is this election happening? Just so that way, I know I mentioned it earlier, but I just want to get the timeline straight here.
Yeah, I don't know the exact date of the election, but this election will be next year. Keep in mind that the Democratic Party now has a candidate, and we're speaking to the independent candidate. Senator Mike Rounds has not announced his election. This would be Senator Mike Rounds. He has not announced an election for this. We had asked him about it recently. Maybe soon we'll see it. We'll see an announcement there. But right now we don't have an announcement. But this election would be in 2026.
Right. Well, enough talking. Here's the interview that Blake was able to get us last Friday. So it's not too long ago. But keep in mind some of those notes that he mentioned. Let's take it.
All right, we are sitting here with Brian Bengs. He is the U.S. senatorial candidate for South Dakota, running as an independent candidate. We are having this interview at a time when there are multiple situations taking place at the same time. But I think top of mind right now, and right before we did this interview, and we are going to be airing this full interview on Monday, so I want to say that we are taping this interview Friday afternoon, and we just got word that Iran has started some retaliation against Israel. I do want to start right here. What do you make of those first strikes by Israel on Iran's, I believe these were their nuclear development sites. What do you make of those, and how do you think the U.S. needs to navigate this?
Okay, well, from the standpoint, I previously taught international law and the law of armed conflict. So from the standpoint of international law, they were grossly illegal actions. And the Israelis have justified this by citing the doctrine of preemptive self-defense, wherein they decide, hey, at some point in the future, you will be a threat to us, and they took action against that. So striking the nuclear facilities makes sense if they're approaching that from that standpoint. From the standpoint of international law, it was a blatant violation. So it'll be up to the Security Council to decide, but they're going to be mired in politics. So I don't expect anything to happen from that. But the precedent it sets is not good for the world going forward, because then we're just basically tossing out the standards we've applied since the end of World War II with the UN Charter system.
Can you help explain why, where the nuclear sites were at, and when I say at, I'm saying in their stage of development, would not allow for such an attack?
That they would not allow for?
Yeah, like where they were right now with development, why they would not.
Okay.
If this makes sense, if they would not legally trigger a strike.
Yes, I actually wrote about the Natanz facility, which is the primary nuclear enrichment facility in Iran, in 2007 when I was working on my degree. So that facility has been operating for at least since 2007 and years before that as well. And it is designed as a hardened facility with multiple layers of concrete, with spacing between them to ensure that they would not be subject to easy attack. So whether the Israelis were successful in attacking that is unclear because they would require significant amount of bunker buster weapons and more than one to do that successfully. So with the ability of the Iranians to enrich nuclear material to bomb grade quality, they have the capacity right now, I would assume, I think that's probably a safe bet, to produce it and have been producing it, and they may have some in a stockpile as well already. I'd be surprised if they didn't, frankly. So if you were going again off this preemptive self-defense, which has been roundly rejected by the world since it was announced by President Bush in 2003, if you're going off that, then yes, it is a good time to strike them because they've not presumably weaponized it yet. But again, we're violating the rules when we do this.
And I do want to point out, just before we go forward in this conversation, that you spent 6 years as an Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. You spent a number of years beyond that in the Air Force. You say you taught international law at the Air Force Academy, and you also did at the NATO Academy in Germany.
The NATO school, yes.
The NATO school, sorry, in Germany, as you mentioned before we came on the air here. I'm curious, from your perspective, how the U.S. should navigate through the next several weeks, if not months.
Yeah, well, we're going to get blamed. No questions asked. I think Iran has already said we are partially responsible, and to an extent we are partially responsible in the sense that we are the primary weapon source for Israel. They get their aircraft. I believe it was 200 aircraft I'd heard were used in this strike. They're probably almost all going to be American aircraft. The weapons that they use, the ordnance that they drop, the bombs, are probably almost all going to be an American-supplied weapon. And if you're attacking Natanz, you have to have the GPS-guided bunker busters. So those are basically going to be an American weapon. So are we involved? Well, we're supplying the armaments to make this happen. And did we directly help plan it? Apparently not, as I understand it. But we're going to be blamed for it. And the standard Iranian approach to any assault on them has been to threaten the oil supply of the world by virtue of the Straits of Hormuz. So it's an international strait through which I believe 25% of the world's oil and a higher percentage of the world's liquid natural gas passes through. And their approach has always been to send a swarm of boats out to stop tankers and anything else from going through there.
So as a senatorial candidate, what do you think Congress, and when I say Congress, I mean both the House and the Senate chambers, what do you think their messaging needs to be right now to the executive branch? The
executive branch, we do not need another war. You know, Israel is just wrapping up the ongoing saga in Gaza, and now they're picking a fight with Iran. So that has the potential to destabilize the entire Middle East, and by virtue of that, the entire oil sales system in the world, where the economies of basically every country in the world depends on the price of oil being reasonable. And if we have a regional conflict like that, it's not going to go well. So they need to try to put the fires out to the extent they can, and not just take a one-sided, oh, Israel, we support you blindly. Iran does have, they're a state sponsor of terror, so they're not that much of a victim, but they do have at least the possibility of claiming that the rules, international law was violated in this attack.
I want to take things more domestically now, especially as this is a very dynamic situation. And again, we are mostly going to be airing this interview on Monday. So let's take things domestically. I know recently you were outspoken about President Trump's decision to send troops into Los Angeles, both National Guard. There were, I believe, a couple hundred Marines also stationed there. And you have concerns about this.
Oh, absolutely. Whenever you send military forces into an American city, everybody should be concerned. It's not something to be taken lightly. It should be a matter of last recourse. I believe the last time, there have been federal troops in LA before. In '92, George H.W. Bush sent in some troops to quell the riots following the Rodney King situation. And there was an incident there with some active duty troops. I don't recall if they were Army Marines, but military forces are not trained the same way as law enforcement. They're just not. They have different missions. So when you take active duty troops and put them into the situation of, hey, not everybody is your enemy, you're just trying to keep the peace and prevent criminal activity from happening. There was a situation where a police officer had some incident at a house and he said, cover me, to some active duty folks. And when they hear that, they think, okay, covering fire, start shooting. When you say cover me in the law enforcement context, it means be ready in the event something happens to take action. So when you start shooting on a cover me, they shot up a house. And that's the difference in training. So situations like this are going to come up because the job's different, and it should be something that is done in consultation with, at a minimum, with the state and local government officials there.
I am curious what kind of path forward you would like to see as far as action the government could take to keep these protests peaceful. Obviously, we have seen images of highway patrol cars burning in Los Angeles. We've seen Waymo cars burning in Los Angeles. So I am curious, obviously you don't like the military approach, but from the federal level, should there be any support, any involvement there and helping or aiding these protests in becoming peaceful?
Well, yes. There obviously, none of this stuff should be happening. The violence and that sort of thing, that should not be happening. So to the extent that it cannot be controlled by local law enforcement, and I've not heard, maybe I've missed it, I've not heard local law enforcement saying, absolutely, we need the National Guard, we need this, we need if they need the National Guard, the governor should be the one saying, okay, I'll send in the National Guard. Having Marines on the ground is absolutely the wrong answer, I think, in this situation, unless requested by the state and local authorities. So we have our former governor, who was there yesterday, saying, oh, we want to liberate the city from its leadership. That's the talk of military occupation. I don't even understand what she's trying to accomplish with that. And then she's on the record from last year talking about, oh, if Joe Biden ever tried to federalize our National Guard, we'd have a war on our hands. There's some hypocrisy going on here, and this is used as a political theater. It should not be a political theater. Military personnel should not be a political pawn.
I do want to go into a more broader discussion about immigration. What kind of action do you think the United States needs to take as it pertains to illegal immigration?
Illegal immigration? Well, what I've suggested in the past is that we adopt something akin to what the Air Force uses for security around the nuclear weapon facilities, where you have electronic monitoring, and then you have roving patrols that are not too far away. And then if the electronic monitoring says, hey, there's something happening here, we need to have something come response to that. So in lieu of a wall, that would be my suggestion, is a high-tech response force with that regard. Now, the last time that we've actually addressed immigration writ large in the United States was in 1986. So the year I celebrated my 16th birthday, we fixed the immigration system. The immigration system now is broken again. It needs to be fixed, and yet nothing is getting done. So we need to actually have people talk in good faith about what are we trying to accomplish with the immigration system. And taking away the incentive is a good thing, though, I think.
Okay, so a couple things here we'll unpack, but we'll first go back into the immigration system as it is. And what right now you're alluding to legal immigration, people that come here and they're legitimately trying to become U.S. citizens. What do you think is broken, and what do you think needs to be fixed?
Well, there's a lot of things that are not right with this anymore. We've got, for example, the family, the focus on the family, that if one person gets here, then they can bring the trail back along. And I support family reunification, but at a certain point, it should not be the sole focus of our immigration system. What do we want to accomplish? Who are we as a people? Who are we inviting here to join us in the great American experiment of democracy? That's the questions we need to answer, and nobody's been asking those questions for the American people to answer.
And now when we talked about illegal immigration, you had brought up efforts on the border. The efforts that you're describing are border security efforts, specifically when we're at the border. My question is, what is your philosophy once somebody is in the United States illegally? Should that person be able to remain here, or what should be the action of the federal government at that point?
So if they are productive individuals of society and they're not, if they're criminals and everything, yes, they should not be here. They should go back to where they came from. But if they're productive members of society, for example, agriculture, or construction, the crews that you see working in those fields are predominantly immigrants. So if they're productive, and the president alluded it to himself recently when he talked about farm workers and hotel workers, that, oh, we need to come up with a different approach for them. Yes, we do. If they're here and they're working and doing something constructive, paying taxes, then yes, what is wrong with them staying here?
Okay, so now I want to move back to another issue, just because we're going to keep this pretty wide-ranging, and that is the big, beautiful bill. And it is currently in the Chamber of Congress that you're running to get a seat in the Senate. What do you make of the big, beautiful bill? We've seen a lot of different arguments really coming from different angles. It seems like everybody has their own take on this bill. I'm curious what your take is on the bill and some fundamental changes you think the Senate should make to it.
Yeah, my philosophy for the entire race that I'm running is that our society needs to favor work over wealth. And I think the problem with that bill is it favors wealth over work. So the people that are doing the work, the people that are generally not making a huge amount of money, they're just scraping by, they're kind of getting the shaft in the big, beautiful bill, while the people at the very top are getting massive, massive tax cuts. And you could at least make a plausible argument if you're saying, oh, we need to cut things and everything to start paying down the debt and get the budget balanced. But it doesn't even do that. It just cheats people and sticks more on the national debt by continuing to run deficits. So what is in it for regular folks? I don't see it.
What do you think they should add to it that would benefit regular working people? Is there anything that you've been able to identify where you say they need to add this?
Need to add this? Well, I would say when we're talking about taxation.
Or take out, I mean, really.
I would say it could be removed.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
Take out the cuts for the very top and toss them down to the bottom. If you want people not to pay taxes, and I don't like paying taxes, I'm sure you don't either. So if you want people
I
to
love
pay
them.
taxes, do you? Okay, well, we'll have a little disagreement about that, I guess. If you don't want people paying taxes, the people that shouldn't be paying taxes are the people that make the least. So let's readjust this and flip it basically. Flip it so the people at the bottom get the giant tax breaks that they're giving the people at the top.
Okay, I kind of want to just give you the floor now at this point in time to just tell us where you would like to see politics head. It's always interesting when you're talking to somebody from the third party, you're kind of looking at this, I'm sure, from the outside. For both parties, really, what do you think needs to be fixed?
Oh, geez, that's that's huge.
Well, these are the two mainstream parties, so what do you see as far as just political discourse, any of that?
Yeah, well, that's the big issue, I think. Partisanship today in the age of information, because it didn't used to be like this, but in the information society we live in, everybody has their own reality. And we don't live apparently in the same place. You ask somebody from conservative, and you ask somebody from the liberal perspective, how are things going? And the answer is going to depend on who's in power at the time. It's either horrible or things are going great. And it's not the same. So we need to get past the partisanship and live in the same reality. But the system, partisanship, demands that you not do that because you can't win if everybody's living in the same reality. So the big problem with partisanship is hypocrisy. It allows you to go, hey, it was horrible when you do it, but when my guy's doing it, hey, it's awesome. And it cannot be that way. If it's horrible, it should be horrible when anybody does it, not just when the other guy does it.
Yeah, and just in general, I guess I just want to give you the final floor here to just tell us something you think nobody's paying attention to that the federal government should be paying more attention to. A lot of issues, they make the news cycles, but in reality, I think a lot of politicians and prospective politicians have ideas in the back of their head where they're saying, we're not really focused on this. And as somebody who would like to come in and enter this and enter the Senate, what is something you think Congress needs to be focused on that they're not?
Okay, what I was just looking at today was where our federal budget is going. So a huge, huge chunk of our budget goes to healthcare. The healthcare system in this country is broken, 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 broken. We spend far more per capita and we get worse results than other countries, Canada, Switzerland, Austria, Germany. They spend less and have better results. How much does it cost to go have a routine surgery? Yeah, you can call up the doctor and they'll say, no, I don't know, I can't tell you. No other system operates like this.
For a second, I thought you were asking me. I'm going, I can't give you that answer.
Right, if you were a doctor, you were going to do the surgery, and I called you and you said, no, I can't tell you. That's just what we come to expect. How much do I owe? Well, we'll figure it out. Our system should not operate this way. The first step to reforming this, which is sucking up, again, so much of our federal budget and state budget and your personal budget, is to approach it similar to what the Public Utilities Commission does in South Dakota, where you say, okay, this is you operating these things, this system, healthcare industry, but tell us how much your overhead is and everything, and then we'll tell you how much you can charge. And you're entitled to a reasonable profit, but where is the money going? We're spending more than everybody else, and where does it go? I have no idea.
And at this point, you just don't think that Congress, Senate, any of them are paying enough attention to anything?
Both parties are at fault in the sense that if you look, for example, if you look at the Blue Cross Blue Shield, who they give their money to, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. It's down the line. They're spreading money on both sides of the aisle to keep the money train flowing for them.
Okay. I think we're going to end it right there, unless there's anything else you want to get to. But I really just wanted to give you the floor to kind of focus on an issue you just,
Well, healthcare.
you're not seeing there.
Healthcare.
All right, we're coming back out of that really quickly. Are there any other points that you'd like to kind of mention there as our viewers just heard?
I just think when we're talking about elections, hopefully we can get the other candidates, in here to do this.
I think
this is a great opportunity.
Yes.
The way that this show works, it's kind of freeform. We start off obviously with a few talking points, but we move around. So just want to say that for everybody who's been watching Political Pulse, we're trying to get everybody.
Yes. So if you
both with the Senate and the gubernatorial election.
Exactly. And if you're interested, feel free to reach out. We'll put that email out there as well. You can reach out to me or to Blake as well. And again, we're going to be trying to get all the kind of the people that are going to be on that ballot here on set, so that way we can give, we can ask and give you guys what you want, which is the answers that you want to hear.
Also, can I make one last note?
Go for it.
I'm never going to eat pistachios again before I come out here, because the whole time we're talking, I'm like getting the pistachio out.
I'm over here thinking it's like you drank like a pistachio latte or something. I guess you're just eating pistachios.
Yeah, yep. Just eating pistachios at, first thing in the morning. There's nothing unnormal about that.
Hey, I don't blame it, or I don't blame you. But yeah, thank you again for joining us here on today's KOTA's Political Pulse. We'll see you again here next Monday. We are talking to Nicole Yuri Balk for the second time during this show. But for now, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.